Hello, and welcome to our webcast for February 2018.
Happy Groundhog Day.
Yeah, I doesn't have saw my
Shadow.
shadow, so we will have an early.
That's because you had your eyes closed because it's sunny out.
Okay, I'm my own groundhog. Okay. My name is Christian Debris, and this is ABS book, director of Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet, and also joining us, Taylor Hyatt, our policy analysis and our outreach coordinator.
Hi everyone, glad to be back.
Sorry? Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disabilities. Okay, today's topics: capacity and undue influence. Part 1, because there will be many parts. Ontario, second one, Ontario court order doctor to refer for assisted suicide and euthanasia. And the third one, announcement, we still need YouTube subscribers. We need you. So Amy will talk about it.
Okay. Si tu veux monter le volume sur l'ordinateur, tu peux le faire avec.
Comment on fait pour monter le volume?
C'est en haut à droite.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay. Capacity and undue influence, part 1. In all assisted suicide and euthanasia ASE laws, one of the supposed safeguards is that in order to be eligible for assisted suicide and euthanasia, the person has to be capable to make a decision, and the decision must be informed and voluntary, not subject to undue influence or external pressure. So that's kind of a safeguard.
And all those things came from the decision of the Supreme Court of Canada in the Carter case.
Right. All of those requirements are from the Supreme Court, and so they were written into Canada's law, but they're also in other laws in other jurisdictions. So it's pretty universal, those requirements. Specifically, in the Carter case, the Supreme Court wanted to protect, quote, vulnerable persons, unquote, from, quote, being induced to commit suicide in a time of weakness, unquote. So that's, what they were after, and that's a good idea. So in the next few weeks, we're going to talk about what it means to be capable to choose death, who makes that decision, and how. We'll discuss what vulnerable person means, and we'll also define undue influence and external pressure as they apply to assisted suicide and euthanasia. Finally, we'll look at a study from the Netherlands showing that doctors there aren't very careful in how they determine capacity. So let's start with capacity. I said supposed safeguards because assisted suicide and euthanasia laws don't actually explain how the safeguards are supposed to be carried out or enforced. So even though the courts in the Carter case said that we need a, quote, stringently limited and carefully monitored system, unquote, there are no directions in the law or proposed regulations as to how the doctor should decide who has the capacity or what situations add up to undue influence or external pressure. So,
could you explain this word, maybe so not everybody understands?
Which one? Stringently. Oh, stringently. Good idea. I'm trying to make this understandable. And they said stringently. Stringently is very strongly and strictly. It's kind of a cross between strongly and strictly.
Okay. So,
but it's interesting. They want to do this strict and strong regulation, but there's nothing in the law that says how it's going to happen. Usually, that's not too big a bother because laws sort of tell you what to do, and then the regulations that come out tell you how to do it. But the regulations that we went over a few weeks ago didn't include anything about capacity.
As far as I understand, how do you call it when you insult a judge? It's
it's an insult.
No, but it's a penalty.
Contempt of court.
Okay, so it is.
Yeah.
But the problem is that this is the government.
So, okay. The words capacity and competence are often used to say the same thing. In legal terms, capacity means the ability to make medical decisions, while competence means the person who make decisions about financial or other matters. But if you read any articles, case laws, court cases or laws, you'll see that the two words are used interchangeably. So even though they're supposed to have different meanings or content, they're not.
Okay.
Okay, so one really basic problem using the capacity standard is that it applies to decisions for medical treatment, not euthanasia, where the stakes are much higher.
Yeah, why it's like that?
Well, let's see, because first of all, the stakes are much higher because there's only one outcome for euthanasia, and that's death. And secondly, with a medical decision, the goal is to remedy the problem. But with euthanasia, the goal is to kill the person. So,
but the assisted suicide is the same goal.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. So the idea is that if we have capacity for medical decisions that are about healing people, is it really a good idea to apply the same standard to a decision to die, which is much more serious in some ways than which kind of medical treatment to heal you you're going to? Okay. Medical decisions are based on the hope of cure or improvement. The hope provided by assisted suicide and euthanasia is only of a false idea of control. It doesn't end the person's suffering as much as it ends the person who is suffering. Medical decisions also are about risk and weighing costs. So there are risks and costs on both sides and different factors to consider. Advantage of one choice over another. Or try other treatments. Assisted suicide has only one outcome.
Yeah, you could not do it again.
Right. So if you try a medical procedure and it doesn't work, you could try something else. But if you try assisted suicide, that's it. All done.
So there's many helpful things could be taught to the people. They could be home improvement, improvement in the money, improvement or the pain management and things like that.
Yeah.
Before
we get to assisted suicide. Yep.
But it's not always done.
Right. Also, with medical decisions, the person may have the option to change their mind, but with assisted suicide and euthanasia, you can't take it back. So if you do a medical procedure, you try a certain drug, and the drug doesn't work, you can stop taking the drug and go on to another thing. But assisted suicide, there's no going back.
If you choose assisted suicide, taking the drug and die, you could, and if the death is not the way you want, you could not go back, you are dead.
Yeah, too late. Okay. In general, the higher the stakes, the more detailed the evaluation of capacity is supposed to be.
Logical. Yeah.
Again, we're talking about supposed to be. And that's a general principle that applies across the board in capacity kinds of decisions. It also applies when you're talking about wills and inheritance and stuff.
Easy to understand.
To figure out if the person's capable of making a will. The higher the stakes, the more careful the evaluation should be. So you would imagine that the person who does the evaluation would be trained to do it and would use the best possible tool.
Logical too.
Not so much.
Oops. Why?
There are several questionnaires, assessment tools, that mental health experts have created to evaluate someone's capacity. And they're often used by psychologists to figure out if somebody has the cognitive ability to understand and process information. None of them, however, are adapted for use with assisted suicide and euthanasia decisions. Nor is it mental health professionals who decide if a person is capable. It's family doctors, and they are not required to use the assessment tools that are available to determine a person's capacity. So,
flip a quarter and it will give you a same result.
Right. So, you know, where's the stringent system that's closely monitored? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, we will have to search quite a lot to find it.
Right. An important thing to know about capacity is that everyone is assumed to be capable to make medical decisions. So that's the starting point. Unless there's a reason to think that they're not. Unlike the most common definitions, under the most common definitions of capacity, the person must be able to, one, understand the information that they're given, and that's the understanding part. Apply the facts to their situation. So if the doctor says, I have brown eyes and you're going to have a prognosis of 6 months, if the person says, well, I think I'll go with this doctor because he has brown eyes, that's not really important information.
Yeah, not related. But
not related to the situation.
Could think like that. Oh, right. He has so beautiful eyes. He must be true.
Right, exactly.
Like they vote for a president or for a person.
Exactly. So you have to apply the relevant facts to the situation, and you have to weigh the benefits and risks of each choice. And that's the reasoning part of the decision. And you have to make a choice and express it. And that's the expression part of the test. So those are the 4 things: understanding, appreciating, reasoning, and expression.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit vague for some people.
The definition focuses on a person's cognitive and mental ability to remember and think, but completely ignores the emotional and social factors that can influence the decision. Adding that the choice must be voluntary doesn't cover all of those other factors. So, they're trying to make up for the problem, but saying that it has to be voluntary doesn't cover all of the additional issues like emotional. It doesn't cover the effect of, lack of access or lack of personal assistance. In a 2016 report entitled Assessing Vulnerability in a System of Physician-Assisted Death in Canada, the Canadian Association of Community Living listed and explained some of the factors and defined what makes a person vulnerable to, quote, being induced to commit suicide in a time of weakness, unquote. And these factors are that a person might be suicidal rather than making a well-reasoned decision.
Yeah, but that way, sometimes when it's somebody looking nice and young and want to suicide himself, they will just put themselves in custody for protect themselves.
Right. The hospital will put them in the hospital. They'll be put in the hospital to protect themselves.
Yeah,
but if a person has a disability,
sometimes they say, "Oh, it could be good the idea, sir. You're getting old and you're not very well."
So capacity is assumed, even if the two people both are suicidal. Capacity is assumed when a person has a disability. Persons, another potential way to identify if somebody is a vulnerable person is that their suffering comes from social and emotional more than physical factors. So they feel like a burden. They're afraid of being put in a nursing home. They can't get out of their house. Those are social factors, and if those things are the reasons behind their desire, then that's going to influence their capability to make a decision.
Yeah. For me, it's easy to understand.
Right. Also, the person is being persuaded, encouraged, pressured, or coerced to ask for euthanasia. That's a pretty obvious one, but again, none of these terms are defined, and the concept of undue influence is defined in case law that relates to wills and inheritance, but and we're going to have to apply that to this situation, but it isn't a perfect fit. And another factor to consider is that the person lacks resilience, meaning that they can't bounce back or they don't have the energy or strength to resist and overcome problems that they face. And so if a person doesn't have those capacities, but they don't have the ability to bounce back from setback, then they are probably going to be a vulnerable person. And finally, another factor to consider is evidence that the person is actually vulnerable rather than potentially vulnerable. Okay, here are some other problems that arise when deciding if someone is capable. First, if the person has a communication disability, the doctor may depend on a relative or carer to speak for them or may use a communication device that doesn't work well.
Sometimes it gives very bad results. Yeah. Very, very bad.
I realize I've been sort of going straight through here, Taylor. Do you want to add something?
The only thing I can think of is I've come across the difference between ending suffering and ending people who are suffering quite often, and that's a difference that needs more attention.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. Another problem that can arise is even when the person doesn't have a communication problem, doctors may talk to the family member instead of directly to the disabled person.
It happened to us in some sort. Even for a bra.
Yeah, that was the best example. We went to for me to buy a bra, and the sales lady kept talking to him.
They were teaching me because she was having a cane, or a white cane. So it was obvious that my wife was blind. So she talked to me. Hey, I doesn't need any bra, and I doesn't even know how to choose it. Okay.
Just because you might have a problem seeing the product doesn't mean you have a problem understanding it. That's ridiculous.
Right, exactly.
But it's happened for more serious things. In the life or death situation, sometimes it happens. They doesn't talk to the people who are disabled. They talk to the family. But sometimes the family if the people is very dependable of the family, sometimes they are very sick, they are very tired, and they could not support anymore because they doesn't have any help, and they wish that the person died. So look at the result. The ending is euthanasia, automatically.
Yeah. Just to step back for a second to the issue of communication. In the proposed regulations that we went over a couple of weeks ago, they talk about that there should be some provision to enable communication, but it's the last thing on the list. And it should be the first thing. If you're trying to have a conversation with somebody about their prognosis, their diagnosis, the treatment options available, blah, 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 that there needs to be good communication both ways, both for the person to speak and for them to understand.
It is supposed to be the first thing.
Right.
But right now, like the law is made, people with suicidal and disabled go to a doctor that he doesn't really know, any doctor, and say, I want to die. And probably it will end by an assisted suicide.
Let's see. Another problem that can come up is that doctors rarely provide all the information the person needs to make an informed decision. So in those conversations that are supposed to be relaxed and long, where the doctor gives information about the person's medicals, the person's illness and what the treatments are, they don't always give all the information. They rush through it and the person isn't necessarily able to follow everything.
Do you want to continue as you are, or do you want to have a euthanasia?
Or a treatment. Now, the doctors don't really suggest euthanasia, but they say, you know, what kind of treatment do you want? What do you want to do? And they go really fast and the person doesn't necessarily.
Yeah. And at the end, if it doesn't change the situation for them, they may choose to die. But sometimes there is solution for dying, for stopping the suffering, or being less burdened, whatever.
Because the doctor is only giving them medical information, not talking about adapting their home, discipline, providing personal assistance services, making sure they don't get stuck in a nursing home.
Talking to their pair or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. People often don't remember everything the doctor told them, and doctors don't verify that the person really understands what they're saying. Doctors are supposed to ask people to repeat back what they said, you know, so that they understand, and they don't. They say, "Do you understand this?"
Oh yeah. Like in the school, everybody that doesn't understand what I said, and the class say yes, yes, yes. And if you take an exam, you know what happened. Yeah. The majority of the class failed.
Right, exactly. Let's see. Another problem is that many people feel pressured to sign consent forms. And one study showed that most people thought they had to sign the consent form whether or not they wanted the treatment.
Yeah, it's a medical paper. You have to sign it.
Right. Yeah.
There's this perception that doctors have a lot of authority. If I don't do what he says, who knows what's going to happen to me?
Right, exactly.
Remember my father last year. The doctor came in and want absolutely that my father sign a DNR.
Right.
Hey.
Oh, did I?
Go ahead.
Sorry, did I tell you that they had the DNR chat with me during my recent hospitalization? Yeah. So for those of you who don't know why I've been away for the last few weeks, I was in the hospital with pneumonia, and they were asking me if it came to the point where you couldn't breathe, do you want to be put on oxygen? Do you want CPR in place? Of course, I'm only in my mid-20s, and they rightly assume that someone...
And reasonably healthy.
Yeah, I'm a pretty healthy person. I only get one major sickness a year, and they rightly assume that someone in their mid-20s doesn't have a document in place.
And I'm quite sure you like to live.
Yes, yes.
The same for me and my wife too. Okay.
I came very close to telling them, this is what I do for a living. I know what's going on here. Please do let me have everything available.
Good. Excellent. Now you have to check your medical record to make sure the right form got in.
Every time you go to an hospital.
Yep. Well, I have a wallet card that I usually bring with me. This is who I am. This is my diagnosis. This is my accessibility needs. Maybe I should put something in there about extreme measures.
Yeah. Yeah, just get a tattoo.
I want to live.
Oh, I should do what that lady did. Do not euthanize me written on my arm.
Exactly. Okay. Another problem that comes up is that people don't use the information that they get in logical ways. Sometimes they make decisions based on intuition or instinct rather than the facts.
Or they're a card reader, you know.
Right.
Well, you have a
no,
king.
Not even that. Just people say, well, the hospital has a really good reputation.
Yeah.
You know, I know that they'll do the right thing.
Yeah. That's not the way to do, but some people do that.
Yeah. And also people may...
My mother.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. People may only look at the results rather than weighing the risk. So if somebody says, I just don't want to have any pain anymore, so, you know, give me the euthanasia. And they don't really understand that means
alert from calendar, online discussion.
So, they'll not feel anything because they'll be dead. Right. Okay. People, many people prefer to give over the decision-making process to other people. And that's sort of why people, that's very common in people who request assisted suicide. They could perform suicide themselves if they wanted to, but
if they want to die, why they doesn't suicide themselves? Just ask this question, why? They are capable, they have any way to do that anyway, and they don't do, they ask for assisted suicide. It's because they doesn't want to do themselves. Right. They give the responsibility to the society and one other people, and they doesn't want to kill themselves. They want somebody to stop their suffering forever.
Okay. Another problem that comes up is that the informed consent process takes a while. You know, do this, and the most common assessment tool takes about 20 minutes to fill out the questionnaire. And that's over and above the time it takes to talk to the person about the diagnosis, etc. So, you know, if a doctor is feeling rushed, he may not take the time to do a good job in doing the assessment. Another problem is that the feelings and values of the person and the doctor are not taken into account. So,
Absolutely.
you know, the doctor is doing this capacity assessment, and you have to take into account their feelings and about the person's illness and their feelings about disability. And the doctor's estimate of the person's quality of life plays a huge role in the capacity decision. And when people say, I'm taking control of my life, it's not true. They're giving over control to the doctor to determine that they're capable. And if the doctor agrees that they don't have a quality of life, then probably they'll get assisted suicide.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead.
We know that if a doctor looks at the quality of life of a disabled person, they're going to judge the person's quality of life and the person's abilities to be more limited than what the person themselves actually feels.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's completely different.
That's been shown in a lot of studies that doctors underrate the quality of life of disabled people compared to how they rate it themselves. Okay. So we're going to go back to this topic in the next few weeks to cover some more areas. But let's move on to our second subject, which is Ontario court orders doctors to refer for assisted suicide and euthanasia. An Ontario Divisional Court decision released on Wednesday says that physicians in the province who have a moral or religious objection to some controversial medical procedures, such as euthanasia, must refer patients to another doctor who will perform the procedure. So that was the court's decision. And this is a case that we have talked about before. That doctors brought this case because they feel like they're being bullied into making referrals that they don't want to make referrals. They don't want to direct somebody to get a euthanasia. 5 Ontario doctors and 3 groups, the Christian Medical and Dental Society of Canada, the Canada Federation of Catholic Physician Societies, and the Canadian Physicians for Life, challenged the policy making the referrals mandatory. They called it a violation of the freedom of religion and conscience guaranteed by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
I must agree with that.
Yeah.
Because the way it's done a referral is the same thing that some phenomena for killing, paying somebody to kill someone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the people who shoot the murder of people is the same murder that the people who pay for it. Okay, that's no difference. And they ask for somebody who doesn't want to kill anybody to give the killing to another one,
yeah,
and be sure that it will be upheld. That's not good.
And the policy that we're talking about was originally put in place by the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario in 2000.
Oh, but it must be good because they are doctors.
Yeah. The Divisional Court decision conflicts with the preamble of Canada's assisted suicide law, as well as the Constitution, which states in part that everyone has freedom of conscience and religion under Section 2 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and nothing in this act affects the guarantee of freedom of conscience and religion.
So it's loud and clear. You should not do that.
You want to add something, Taylor?
I think we'll save my comment till the end.
Okay. Although the court acknowledges the limits it has placed on freedom of conscience, it says the limits are justified by the benefits to people seeking medical care. The most important one is equal access to care, especially in rural areas. Let's see. And the court added that there is no right, no constitutionally guaranteed right to practice medicine or to work in a particular specialty. Someone can choose to practice an area of medicine that will not include these moral dilemmas. However, someone in need of medical treatment cannot choose whether they need it.
Which is not true.
Right. And again, we're getting to this idea that since when is killing somebody a medical treatment?
Exactly. Death isn't a solution for any problem that requires medical or social action. Most people are persuaded towards assisted suicide because they want relief from a problem that they're facing. But if you choose assisted suicide, you're not going to exist anymore. You're not going to get to experience the relief that you want.
Right.
And also this morning, I found a statement from one of the organizations saying that everybody involved in this case might try to appeal the decision. They want the Supreme Court to hear them out.
Well, that would be interesting. Okay, finally we have an announcement. We still need YouTube subscribers.
We need you. We missed some.
Right.
Please listed us.
Right.
But if you don't want to see our show, you just have to erase the
email you
the
get that
email,
reminds
okay? But please enlist.
Right.
We need you.
Right. So just a reminder that we need people to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you search YouTube for Amy Hasbrook, it's me, or go to our address, which is available on the text version of our
Search for
webcast.
Amy Hasbrook. Hasbrouk.
Right. So we'll find it, and if you subscribe, that will help us in lots of ways.
There's 150 of you following us on Facebook, so there's got to be more of you who want to watch this show regularly.
Yes. And even if you don't want, just listen. We need this thing.
Right.
We need
Just,
it
right. Just
pretty
subscribe.
badly.
Just subscribe. Okay, for more information about the subjects that we talk about here, you could go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet. And we are always putting stuff up on the Facebook page. We put up 2 articles this morning, or we got 2 articles that we're going to put up, and we put the text version of our webcast up on the site. So anybody who needs information, that's where you can go. Also, you can visit our website at tvndy.ca, or you can send us an email at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Taylor for helping out, and thanks to Christian as well. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Amy.
Bye.
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 Thank you.